If you're going to be a wrestler, you're gonna get heat. Given the high pressure atmosphere and how everyone is vying for a spot on the card, it's fair to say that if you're any good at what you do, you're gonna get some heat. With that said, there are some wrestlers who seem to attract it more than others, just carry themselves in a certain way that riles everyone up. Be it in-ring storyline or just two personalities butting heads, the outcome can often be life-changing, and I mean that too. I'm Simon from WhatCulture, and this is the 10 biggest heat magnets in WWE history. Number 10, Jerry the King Lawler. When the King first arrived in the WWE in 1992, everyone wanted a piece of him. Given he had been the main event in Memphis for almost 20 years, he was on the radar as soon as he stepped through the door. This played out by a lot of wrestlers reminding Lawler that in New York, WWE's HQ, what happened in Tennessee meant nothing. They didn't just tell this to his face though, they did it by crapping in his bag and then leaving it in the showers. Nice and mature. As you would imagine, the King brought this to Vince McMahon's attention, with the CEO telling the boys to stop mucking around. Thankfully this did help, along with the realization that Jerry hadn't been brought in for a top spot. Everyone realized that he was just going to be in the mix, and things calmed down. After they in his belongings. Number 9, Sin Cara. Sin Cara was Sin Cara's own worst enemy. Although a huge star in Mexico, when he arrived in the WWE in 2011, he let his prior success dictate his future. For one, he refused to learn English because he wasn't interested, which is going to annoy people. That was made worse when he failed a wellness policy test and continued to screw up in the ring. Just to hammer in the coffin nail, during a match with Alberto Del Rio on Raw 2013, Sin Cara dislocated his finger and refused to finish the match. Now in the real world, this makes sense, but in WWE land that's the worst thing you can do, and Del Rio was livid. Throw in what many perceived to be an attitude problem, and the original Sin Cara was released before fellow Mexican Hunico started working under the same mask instead. Number 8, Terry Taylor. Even JBL has said that Terry Taylor has had more backstage heat than anyone in history, and if Bradshaw is saying that, you know something is up. Whether it's true or not is debatable. Either way, many people do say that when Taylor joined the WWE in 1988, he was given the terrible Red Rooster gimmick as a rib because he was so unpopular backstage. Why was he so unpopular, you ask? Because wherever he has worked, he has a reputation for telling on the boys whenever he can. Like a little guy in school. It got so bad, fellow wrestlers would cut up his clothes, which Terry would happily tell management about, obviously. Yet he still finds a way to be hired today. Since his wrestling career came to an end, he's been an agent, a booker, a trainer, and an announcer. So he must have some dirt on someone or something. Number 7, Shawn Michaels. There are loads of stories out there that suggest from the years of 1996 to 1998, Shawn Michaels was incredibly hard to work with. Fueled on by a troubling drug issue, his band of buddies known as the Clique and the support of Vince McMahon meant he could get away with a lot others couldn't. He was a beacon for hate from the rest of the locker room. He did what he wanted, and he did it when he wanted to. This is why the change in the HBK of the late 90s to the one of the early 2000s is so remarkable. Everyone bar none has said he was like a new man, and a better one at that. So much so that no one really talks about the original version anymore. He found peace, and because of that, so did everybody else. Number 6, The Miz. The Miz has always been pretty open about the hazing he has received from the WWE locker room over the years. In many ways, he kind of wears it as a badge of honor. It all started because of his background. Going the reality TV route as opposed to the more traditional wrestling one, some people in the back actively despised The Miz simply because he had been on shows like MTV's The Real World. That wasn't even anything to do with pro wrestling. It didn't matter he had been training since 2003 or been part of WWE developmental since 2005. He was the reality TV show guy. He was going to get it. The most famous of these stories is when he got banned from the locker room and was forced to get changed in the toilets after he ate chicken over Chris Benoit's bag. Most people would have quit, but not The Miz. Instead, he used it as fuel, and not only has it given him a strong sense of character, but he's now a WWE darling and used for a lot of media, mostly when John Cena can't do it. That is some turnaround. Number 5, Chris Jericho. When Chris Jericho first debuted with the WWE, his initial promo with The Rock was considered a misstep. Problem 1. Then on his second night in, he called The Undertaker a giant slug and the personification of boredom without checking with the dead man first. Problem 2. His first match on Raw then saw him not work like a WWE should have done, mostly because no one had filled him in. Problem number 3. Already off to a poor start, it actually got worse when Jericho never asked for any advice about his new character, mostly because he thought it was going okay. Nobody had told him otherwise, even though management weren't fans, and this led to others thinking he was arrogant. As the new kid, his back was against the wall. His tumble continued when he gave Chyna a black eye at Armageddon, leading to Vince McMahon ripping him to pieces and telling Y2J that if he couldn't go out there and have a good match with X-Pac, he'd be fired. Lovely. Of course, ultimately Jericho was always going to struggle. Coming over at a time when the Monday Night Wars were fiercer than ever, no one in the WWE locker room trusted him and he had a huge target on his back. It was so bad, Triple H once referred to it as nuclear heat. That's not good. Number 4, Daniel PUDER. The man from Tough Enough who shot on Kurt Angle and almost had him, PUDER got a reputation for having a bad attitude during his time at OVW. He had his own merchandise made which he used to give away to fans, fell asleep during training, was always on his phone. He also apparently would brag to friends about beating WWE guys as if the contests were legit. None of that is going to help you out. Determined to make him show more respect, PUDER was put in a match with Bob Holly so the hardcore one could chop the out of him to try and beat it into his head about how to behave. He then got his ass whooped by Benoit, Guerrero and Holly at the 2005 Royal Rumble, and then WWE finally got rid of him when he refused to accept a lesser contract after his original one had expired. Number 3, Mr. Kennedy. In 2006, Mr. Kennedy was the future of the WWE. At one point he was even dubbed the next Stone Cold, which is crazy when you think about it now. While the office was very much behind him, as you can tell from seeing him on TV at the time, he was even pegged to be Vince McMahon's illegitimate son, an angle from 2007 that was designed to propel Kennedy into the stratosphere. And then it all came to a head. After losing his WrestleMania 23 briefcase when a shoulder injury turned out to be nothing more than a deep bruise, meaning Edge didn't need to have the case transferred to him, it got worse after being chosen to promote the company following the Benoit tragedy. Wanting him to sell a nice image of the WWE, he then got busted ordering steroids in the infamous Signature Pharmacy scandal and got suspended for 30 days. Then came his attitude. Apparently not great, important people began to sour on him, and after a botched backdrop against Randy Orton and a dodgy hip toss against John Cena, the writing was on the wall. He'd crossed the wrong superstars. Released in May 2009, WWE had enough, and his heat led him to the door. Number 2, Melina. At one point, it seemed as if Melina Perez had heat with every single woman on the WWE roster. Didn't help that during her time in OVW, Melina had slated Mickie James through her blog. Bad move. It's hard to figure out the truth, but the sheer amount of stories regarding Melina sabotaging her fellow WWE women are to such an extent, you have to guess at least some are true. As well as James, Melina has had some sort of altercations backstage with Tiffany, Candice Michelle, Maria Kanellis, Sharmell, Lita, Brooke Adams and Trish Stratus. Just for more evidence, when she arrived on the main roster, Lita exercised her veterans' privileges and banned her from the locker room, just because of her bad behaviour. She rubbed so many people up the wrong way it even transferred across to real-life boyfriend Johnny Nitro, and he suffered too. So it wasn't that much of a surprise when she got called to Wrestlers Court in 2006 for her bratish behaviour. Thankfully, ever since her WWE release, these tales seem to be a thing of the past, and people only have lovely things to say. And all that matters is today. So that's wonderful. Number 1, Muhammad Hassan. There are two schools of thought in relation to Muhammad Hassan's WWE run. First is that he deserved everything he got. He was pushed to the moon at only 22 years of age and only 2 years in the business, and he acted like a prima donna and had a huge ego. The other is that he wasn't like this at all and was just a kid trying to fit in with a jealous locker room who wanted his spot. This, after all, was a man working with Hogan, Michaels, Mick Foley, Jerry Lawler, Chris Jericho, Batista, John Cena and The Undertaker. You'd imagine the truth is somewhere in between, but he very much was hauled up into Wrestlers Court twice in his short succession with the company. Tasked with refusing to sell for Sergeant Slaughter during a match in 2005, he'd also complained to Eddie Guerrero for using the camel clutch, because, that was his finisher. The latter incident especially sent things into fury mode because Eddie's father had invented the move. Again, Hussein apparently only did this because he was encouraged to do so for a rib, meaning the $4,000 bar bill he was forced to pay seems a tad unfair. There's every chance he may have been able to heal these wounds if he had stayed on the roster, but the controversial character was written off after appalling storytelling, and he was let go shortly after. And that was that. Know of any other wrestlers that had massive heat? Let us know in the comments below, and then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You can even come tell WhatCulture on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE, or me at Simon Miller 316. I'm Simon from WhatCulture, and I'll chat to you again soon.